Hello and welcome to Safe Schools with Andy and Kurt. I'm Andy Howard.
And I'm Curtis Graves.
And we're thrilled to have with us two of Mobile's most important people to us. We have Chief Barber with the Mobile Police Department, and we have Virginia Guide with the Drug Ed Council. And we have an exciting show today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the concerns we have about drugs.
Well, we're going to talk about safe schools. We're going to talk about making Mobile, the city of Mobile, one of the safest cities in America. We're going to also talk about nextdoor.com, and we're going to talk about synthetic drugs.
We are excited, and just hold for a couple of moments and we'll be right back with you.
Diesel is a very big industry, and I went into it in a 2-year program at the Bryant Career Tech with Tony Tillman.
When Jacob graduated from the Bryant Career Center, he had earned his diesel credential.
The Career Technical Center taught me a lot, all the way from not knowing anything about a motor or engine to knowing pretty much every single moving part of them.
MCPSS Career Tech. Start your future today.
The quality of education that I received from the Mobile County Public School System really prepared me for global success. Being an international opera singer, I get to travel all across the world. And one of the most important aspects about that is being able to communicate and work with people. And the Mobile County Public School System really equipped me to be greatly successful worldwide.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Let's switch to Energy Star light bulbs and stop burning through cash. Saving energy saves you money.
And we're back. We're here with Chief Barber, City of Mobile Police Chief. And Chief, we have several topics we want to talk about with you. For me, Andy, I would assume that you would agree that schools are a reflection of our communities, and what affects the community also affects our educational process.
Absolutely.
And with that being said, Chief, I know one of the things that you're trying to do right now, you're trying to make Mobile one of the safest cities in America, and that's a big job to do. But I'm sure, and I've talked to you before about this, and I know you have a vision to do this. Tell me, how do you plan on getting the city of Mobile there?
Well, it's not one of the safest cities in America. I'm actually proposing that we make it the safest city in America. And it takes a collaborative effort between the government of the city, the institutions that we have, both the school institutions, the civil, the faith-based, and the police department certainly can be on the tip of the spear of that. But the collaborative effort between everybody involved to accept that idea and that goal and to move forward throughout our community.
Okay. How can school system employees and students and parents and business owners help to create this environment?
Well, outside of the family or the family itself, the school institution has the most significant impact on our young people out of any other institution that we have in our community. Understanding that and understanding the needs of children and being able to bring them up as good stewards and as great adults and law-abiding citizens. It becomes very important that law enforcement and the government work together with the school system in order to deal with the next generation that will take over from us.
Absolutely.
Moves me on to my next question for you. Nextdoor.com. Now, I know a little bit about it. I haven't had a chance to pull the site up yet to look at it completely, but I did speak with Ms. Guy about it briefly. You guys are pushing this right now, and I know why you're pushing it. You're pushing it because you want community to get involved with one another and with all the things that are going on in the city. And how better to do that than to connect everyone together to get them communicating within neighborhoods. And that also goes toward helping to make Mobile one of the safest city in America.
You will find, Curtis, that every program that the police department looks at, we bench it against the goal, which is to make it the safest city in America. And so we know that connected communities are safer communities. And so finding the way to do that in today's time, social media. And so Nextdoor.com offers that particular need that we have in order to develop social cohesion, interaction amongst neighbors. You know, we actually come up in a time today, whereas 50 years ago everybody knew everybody on their street.
Right.
That's not the situation anymore.
No.
And you know, people don't pick up the phone and call each other anymore. It's all social media or texting. And Nextdoor.com, it actually operates much like Facebook, which is so popular, that you can send private messages to neighbors, or you can post on a wall, need a babysitter, lost a dog, or whatever it may be. But what also happens is, even though the police department can't see these private messages, we're able to communicate with individual neighborhoods, specific neighborhoods, about any issues, law enforcement issues or safety issues occurring within that neighborhood.
And Virginia, you told me recently that your neighborhood is already involved in it, right?
Right. In fact, me, along with a lot of my neighbors, have already signed up for it. So
great.
we're excited about it.
Good.
It's a connection that, you know, benefits you in multiple ways. Certainly one of the connections is that, you know, there was a time when you knew all of your neighbors and you interacted with all of your neighbors. You know, they talked to you about what was going on in the neighborhood, and the neighbors had a common effort at making sure that not only their homes but their neighbors' homes were safe and that their children were well. It seems that, as you were saying, that the change is that a lot of these connections have transitioned from the face-to-face to the technological connections. And so this seems like, you know, that neighborhood watch, you know, 2014.
Yeah.
It is a virtual neighborhood watch. Actually, we've proposed removing the old standard neighborhood watch signs where guys used to ride around on shifts with walkie-talkies, and putting in the Nextdoor.com that this neighborhood is on Nextdoor.com, and therefore you've increased the surveillance of that area with just a quick message to the police that there's a suspicious vehicle or any activity.
You got a telephone, you can make something happen.
And you know, the smartphones are everywhere now, and that's the growing technology that's out there.
And I guess it's pretty safe to say that most people nowadays are using their phones to communicate with one another or their other computer devices, because we've become so fast-paced and we're always on the go. Like you said before, once upon a time people would say, hello, how are you, how was your day, and now they're texting that to you on the go. So what better way than to create a better and safe community?
I was talking to a friend of mine that has a son that started dating, and he's got a little girlfriend, and they text nonstop all day and all night. Well, he invites her over for dinner. She was there for 3 hours. They hardly spoke to each other. And then as soon as she left, they start texting again. So,
It's funny. I actually read something somewhere recently where a teacher was observing students in the cafeteria, and they were all sitting at the table together, but they weren't talking to each other verbally. They were all texting one another as opposed to communicating, talking. So yeah, we have to find a way to get around that and catch up with the curve of technology to improve our communities. And in improving our communities, let's talk about synthetic drugs. And I kind of want to get both of you guys' opinions on this. I know that synthetic drugs are a major concern in the United States, but how big of a concern is it for the people in the city of Mobile, Virginia?
Well, it's huge, particularly for parents. We want parents talking to their children. These are poisons. They're extremely unpredictable. You know, anytime you use it, you could get a completely different reaction. And so we want parents and educators and faith groups talking to young people about the dangers of these poisons.
And I pulled up a website here, actually, to show some of the substances that are out there, if we can get a camera shot of it. And it's showing the spice, K2 is up here, all these different names. We even saw something else earlier, I believe it was Angry Birds. And again, all this stuff is designed for kids, right? I mean, that's who they're marketing to.
Right, and those are the ones that really just infuriate me the most, because when you put Angry Birds or Scooby-Doo on a pack, and it looks like kind of a Skittles package, it just appeals to children.
Right.
And you know, I think that is just horrible for our children, because we know that even handling it is dangerous. And so we want parents to be able to recognize these packages and to know that, and to talk to their children about how poison they are.
Chief, how do you feel, and what are you guys experiencing in that area right now?
Well, you know, the big difference or the newest trends that we see is the introduction of synthetic drugs into the community. And so the spice itself is being offered to the community as a safe alternative that's not detectable by conventional means to marijuana. And so it's anything but that. The only synthetic drug or the closest thing that it mimics isn't marijuana. It's probably more like LSD that you're taking, along with maybe cocaine, because of the physical reaction to it.
We're going to take a brief break at this time, but we'll be right back with you.
Nonviolence will start with me.
Nonviolence will start with me.
All across the Mobile County public school system, students are taking the pledge.
I pledge to accept the responsibility of my actions.
To solve problems peacefully.
Respect myself and others.
The 100 Days of Nonviolence Pledge. It's an initiative to help explore alternative means of stopping violence among school students. Will you take the challenge? Get involved. Take a stand. 100 Days, 100 Ways.
Smartboard, that's right.
Traditional light bulbs actually generate 9 times more heat than light. Switch to energy-saving bulbs. Saving energy saves you money. When you throw away money on wasted electricity, you're throwing away everything you could have bought with it. Saving energy saves you money.
Hey, and we're back. Hey, Chief, my next question has to do with when did we start seeing synthetic drugs appearing in Mobile, and who's using them primarily?
You know, they first started occurring, I guess, over 5 years ago that we started seeing the synthetic drugs actually being sold legally because, again, it wasn't one of the natural organic compounds that we were dealing with historically, like cocaine or heroin or even marijuana. The stuff that it's given the appearance of a natural plant substance. It looks very similar to marijuana. But it was originally sold over the counter. It was being imported from China and mostly sold at convenience stores throughout the country.
But Virginia, it didn't just start surfacing in this country 5 years ago, though. We started seeing it 5 years ago here, but it's been around much longer. I believe in the military, guys were using it prior to that time and passing drug screens, but getting high. So it's been around much longer than that. I won't guess at how long it's been, but I know it's been longer than 5 years. Can you attest to that, or can you tell us more?
Right. When we first started hearing about it, it truly was in a little bit of an older population, and it was to beat a drug screen. It was a way that these folks felt that they could get high and not get it, not be detected on a traditional drug screen. There is now a drug screen for spice, and in fact, we have a screen at our office for parents to bring their children in to be tested, and it's no cost to the parent. Now we're continuing to have to work on those tests because the chemicals, the bad guys continue to tweak the chemicals, so they're constantly changing. But we've got a really good lab that is working with us and closely with law enforcement to stay on the front end of that.
So from a parent's perspective, what would I look for if I were a parent concerned about the possibility that my child may be involved or have some connection to that kind of behavior? What might I look for?
Yeah, with any kind of drug use, the first thing that you look for is change in behavior. One of the big things is a change in friends. A lot of times when we talk to parents and they say, well, and the child may be 16 or 17, and they say, well, when he started 9th grade, he started hanging out with some different people. So I think really look at your children's friends and know the friends and know the friends' parents. I think it is all about connecting with each other and talking with each other, and it's all about relationships. So I think that when you know the children your children are hanging out with, and when you know their parents and their parents know you, you can at least intervene earlier in that. And then of course there's a lot of behavioral changes, a lot of erratic behavior.
Absolutely.
Chief, you and I were talking earlier about there was a raid in North Alabama recently where drug enforcement agencies a synthetic substance called AB Panaca. What exactly is that?
Well, the AB Panaca and what we found in the locally here was AB Chimanaka, and so how similar they are. They're synthetic, but they're made to mimic cannabinoid products or marijuana, the tetrahydrocannabinol found in marijuana, and so it has similar effects, but it was made in a laboratory to mimic that. But what we saw was it's coming in with compounds that are 10 to 20 times the lethal dose from naturally occurring substances, and so but that's not the only substance we're finding in that. That one was actually produced, or the AB Chimanaka was through Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, but it somehow made its way into the synthetic drug market to mimic again the effects of marijuana.
You're seeing some significant consequences to some of these choices that young folks and adults alike are making and consuming these substances in the hospitals.
Oh, absolutely. And that's when we really started a huge public campaign. Even though we couldn't identify specific compounds, we did note that we had, within a 2-week period, 65 admissions into local emergency rooms with various stages of psychotic behavior in medical emergencies, accelerated heart rates. And so we found out that those were occurring immediately after the use of the spice products. We also had 2 suspicious deaths at that time during the same time period immediately after the use of spice products. And so we went public to try to warn what would appear to be a really bad batch of spice that had entered the area.
That's some pretty serious consequences for somebody involved with spice if they end up having to interact with your department. The legal consequences with spice are pretty serious, are they?
Well, anytime you have psychotic behavior that's brought about by drug-induced psychotic behavior, and I think that the potential for psychotic behavior occurs with any psychoactive drugs out there, but the spice just seemed to really accelerate. Now, I did talk to Dr. Bert Eishold last week at the health department, and we've seen a huge drop in ER admissions. A lot of that, there's been huge amounts of enforcement done to remove the drug suppliers, and we've seized hundreds of pounds of the spice material. We've seen several businesses that were involved in the spice sales, which drove it, off of the shelf, at least over the counters type stuff. And so the availability of it, but the public itself becoming aware of how dangerous this substance is. And to give you a little bit of insight, it's actually made from a tea leaf. It's called a Damiano leaf. Then that tea leaf, which is pretty harmless in itself, is then sprayed down with different chemical compounds like AB Chimanaka or insecticides. It's then dried out and it's packaged, which looks pretty much like any normal packaging of candy M&Ms or Skittles or anything else with different designs and names on it. And so it doesn't appear like the old cloak and dagger type drug dealer. I mean, it's not a plastic bag with material in it. This looks like an industry accepted material. And then, and especially when you buy it at a store, there's this prevailing perception that it's safe, and it's absolutely anything but safe.
Well, let's talk about this substance, AB Chimanaka or Panaca, how they pronounced it in North Alabama. This substance is so potent, according to them, that they had to wrap it several times to keep people from having exposure to it because it's deadly. And I know from listening to the press release, they said that they spray it onto the substance. And again, if you're spraying something onto the substance, you're going to obviously spray more on some parts of it than you are others. So the potency of what you get is very possible to be deadly. So I guess really we want the public to understand, first of all, that it's important to avoid these things at all costs and to educate their children as to why it's important not to be in contact with it, not to involve themselves with other kids who are actually doing it, and to be that person who reports it to school administrators, to resource officers, and to law enforcement.
Absolutely. Virginia, long-term effect. Is there some concern with spice and these chemicals being used and identified in that way, Are there some concerns about that?
We have a lot of concerns about that, mostly because we don't know the long-term effects. You know, we've seen some horrific consequences with people, and there's nothing more heartbreaking than talking with parents that are struggling with their child in a psychotic condition, not knowing when the drugs are going to, you know, metabolize out of the body, when their brain functioning, or if their brain functioning is going to return to normal, and then if there's going to be any kind of long-term consequences. You know, back in the 60s and 70s, you know, with LSD, there were, you know, known flashbacks and a lot of things. So these hallucinogens, just like the chief said, are, you know, have a huge potential for psychosis. There's even some research that it can trigger psychosis in individuals, that they continue to have psychotic experiences. So, you know, we really I can't stress enough to parents how unpredictable this is. And we really, there's so much we don't know.
Are there some things that we would want the parents or the community to know that the Drug Ed Council can do to help?
Right.
Resources.
They can come to our office. They can visit our website. We've got a tremendous amount of information. We'll sit down and talk with them individually just about their family, about setting rules and consequences, about, you know, it's really difficult today to parent children. And, you know, it's so different than when parents were growing up because of technology and because of these threats with these new emerging you know, harmful poisons that are out in the community, and they're being, you know, children at younger and younger ages are being exposed. So we'll be glad to talk with parents to give them information. We've got a lot of education programs, counseling programs, drug testing, all of that at the Drug Education Council.
One of the programs that you have is the CAP program that you married or merged with us, the school system. Right. Could you kind of explain what the CAP program is and how it works?
Right. That is for first-time offenders who violated the school's alcohol and drug policy, and they and their parent have to attend. It's 4 educational sessions. It's 8 hours total of instruction. And then afterwards they're offered additional help if they need it one-on-one with their family.
We're going to take a brief break.
So, Nicholas, how was your day at school today?
It was great. We had fun in class today.
So, what did you do differently today at school? I mean, any new projects?
We got a progress report today.
You got your progress reports today? So, how did you do?
Don't know.
You don't know. That's okay. We can check that right here. Wow. Nicholas.
It started for me when I went into the 1st grade, and then I went on to George Hall Elementary School, and from there to Williamson, where I graduated. The public school system, it had a great impact on me because not only did it prepare me academically for my future career, but it also prepared me for life. Because of its diversity of students and teachers, it really gave me a well-rounded education.
And we're back. Hey, Chief, we're still talking about synthetic drugs in general as well. Tell me, why is it so hard to stop the import of synthetic drugs from China? And I'm assuming China is the primary culprit that's importing these things in.
You know, China was absolutely the big source of the synthetic drugs that were coming into our market. But again, if you remember what I was saying, is that the laws really didn't cover synthetics, and so, you know, what we had was a series of legislation out of the state of Alabama trying to identify certain chemical compounds within the synthetic drugs and make them illegal. And much like Virginia was explaining, is that the chemist on the other end would just tweak the chemicals and therefore keep doing that. And so now we've come out with legislation, untested, at least in court, by trial yet, where if it affects certain receptors in the brain, that it's illegal, and so therefore we can deal with it. But what we have seen, the current trend is to sell the materials or the precursors to make the spice without combining them, and so they're sold separately. The Damiano leaf and then the A.B. Chivanaca, they're being imported into the country, and then they're being combined here. And so the laboratory work of actually spraying these chemicals has left the industry in China and is now being done in bathtubs and stuff here in the United States.
Wow.
People doing bad things to themselves.
Oh,
making
absolutely.
these choices of putting substances in their body that are potentially harmful and likely harmful. And I guess one of the elements to that is just simple education, informing people about, you know, what are safe choices and wise decisions about their health and well-being and their future and path of life. Virginia, we, you know, also recognize you all have some other programs out there. You have a summer program too, don't you?
Right, we have a summer program. We also have a Families Rock program that, that I would love for families to take advantage of. They can call our office, and that's where, you know, some of it's computer-based, and then they meet with a counselor and they talk about, you know, about their particular family and what kind of rules and regulations they're going to set. And it also educates parents about the undeveloped brain in the young person and the fact that risk-taking is a normal part of a child's development, but we've got to make sure that the risks that they take are healthy risks, you know, like they're on a sports field or in a, you know, on a stage with a musical instrument, you know, those kind of risk taking.
Outlets that don't have absolutely horrible consequence.
Right, and can bond the child with their passion for later on in life too.
That's right.
I would imagine that if you could get the family as a unit to actually get involved in the educational process of learning about drugs, that would have more of a profound effect on the overall life of the child, because I believe that we can try to educate them as much as possible on these things, but ultimately they have to go back home and they have to still see and experience the things that have become an everyday occurrence to them or with them. So I support that. Anything that we can do to help you move that forward, we would love to do it.
Thank you.
If I'm a citizen, Chief, and I got some knowledge or concerns about drug activity in my community, obviously I can reach out 911, but how else might I do it? You mentioned the other program. What are some of the ways that folks can help their community, help themselves, and help our law enforcement community?
You know, we have a non-emergency line, 208-7211, but also even through Nextdoor. You're able to message the police department through Nextdoor, through social media, or if you prefer to go through anonymous tips through the Crime Stoppers program. And so that we're able to receive that information just about any way that a person could get it to us.
Wow, I think this has been a great visit today with you two guys, talking about some really important things. Spice is scary. It really does appear to have some serious, potentially negative consequences for not only the individuals who misuse these substances, but for the larger community. And your programs, Virginia, and your department, Chief, I think are just making a huge impact in how we, the citizens of Mobile, can be all right. Thank you all for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.